In today's episode of the Weathered Athlete Podcast, I'm joined by someone whose story and presence deeply moved me from the moment we met at Heroic Public Speaking, Catherine Hammond. Catherine is an award-winning attorney, speaker, and founder of the Hammond Law Group, a Colorado-based estate planning and elder law firm. But beyond her professional accomplishments, she offers a profoundly personal perspective on caregiving. Her journey began at just 12 years old, when she became a caregiver for her mother, who was battling early-onset Alzheimer's. That role continued to evolve as she navigated the challenges of adolescence, law school, and life as a single mother, all while carrying the weight of caregiving far earlier than most. Our conversation covers powerful ground. What it means to become a caregiver before you're even done being cared for. How resentment, guilt, and grief shape Catherine's growth. The ring theory, how it can transform the way families navigate crises. Lessons from generational caregiving and how we pass down more than just assets. How we pass down stories and love and identity. And the importance of forgiveness, presence, and protecting your energy. Catherine also shares how her experience inspired the creation of the True Wealth Family Legacy System, which helps people pass on not just legal documents, but the wisdom and love that creates lasting legacy. Whether you're an adult child walking your own caregiving journey, a grandparent passing down lessons, or simply someone trying to show up with more intention and compassion, this episode will speak to your soul. Let's dive in. Catherine, I am excited to be able to talk to you today. Meeting you at Heroic, it's been an amazing journey and able to only catch part of your story. I can't wait to hear the rest of your speech that you're working on, but I thank you for joining me today.
I'm really honored and grateful to be here with you, Pete.
One of the things I want to start with, and I think it'll kind of tie into your story and your experience with caregiving. I found a couple stats today as I was doing some research. In 2005, we had 1.5 million children age 8 to 18 that were caring for adults. That number increased in 2020 to 5.4 million. So if you think about it, we have 5.4 million children caring for their parents or grandparents or their great-grandparents. And they provide, in 2012, it was $8.5 billion in unpaid labor. So I think we're going to have a dire need. My focus is on caregiving, but I've always been focused on caregivers of the kind of the sandwich generation and up. I think we got an issue we have to start to pay attention to as far as children being caregivers at such an early age. And I know that's something that you had to deal with.
It is. So as you know, my mother, well, let me go back a step. Before the official caregiving, my mother was non-functionally, suicidally depressed when I was young. And so she spent a lot of time, on the bed that she had put into the living room, watching television, and wasn't very interactive. And so when I was about 12 years old, she cut an article out of the Denver Post about this disease called Alzheimer's. And she handed it to me and said, I think I have this. And I, of course, being the ever so wise young adolescent, knew darned well that she didn't have this weird sounding disease. She was just crazy. That was what I thought. And through my teenage years, the depression continued, and I started to notice how many things that other people's parents were doing for them that I had to do for myself and also sometimes for her. When she would drive me someplace new, she would ask me, and this is before Google Maps, of course, she would ask me how to get there. And I, of course, in my young teenage years, had no idea how to get there. And she was very frustrated that I didn't know. But by the time I was in college, she was put on disability from her job as a special ed teacher. And by the time I was 22, she was officially diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I had to hire a lawyer, drag her to court, ask for permission to take care of her. And that's when the caregiving journey really intensified for me.
Wow. So when during kind of those high school years, how'd you deal with that?
Uh, Denial.
Yeah.
I'd say denial and rebellion, actually. Once I, t- when I was 15, I got a job and started working. By 16. I was working full time in addition to going to school. And I just was never home. I didn't want to deal with her. I didn't want to deal with this. I didn't want to deal with the fact that I was losing what little I had had in the mother department. And so I I tried to stay away from it. And it wasn't until I was sitting in the lawyer's office and she said, this is what we're going to have to do to take care of your mom and to sell her house and get her moved into a nursing home, that all the alarm bells that had been going off for 10 years finally, um, you know, came together, and I had to face what I had been trying really hard to push away and deny. And the tears just started pouring out in that moment. And then that's when I think that's when I first found out that I was a caregiver, and I reached out to the Alzheimer's Association. They had support groups, of course, and I think I went to one support group, but I'm 22 years old, and all of these other people were over 50 or 60 taking care of their loved ones, and we just had nothing in common. And so I felt very alone beyond the practical and legal guidance that my lawyer was giving me. I started counseling and just tried to navigate it by getting by.
It's got to be such a challenge. Thanks for sharing that. Is that, it's hard enough to be 22 as it is, and we try to all figure out, okay, what are we going to do with our lives? And then now you have this burden at such an early age of, okay, what can I do to one, take care of your mom? The hope is that most of us don't have to deal with that situation until we've gone through life. We're in our 50s, we're 60s, and then we deal with things later on. So to have that burden so early on, did you have any assistance from anybody else, any family members, any friends?
I did not. I have two siblings, and one had his own set of issues, and the other one was in college and had just been diagnosed with a brain tumor, had to have emergency surgery, was dealing with his own stuff, and he was away at college. He's my little
Yeah.
brother, and so I took it on.
Okay. So you're the oldest.
No, I'm the middle.
Okay. You're the middle,
Yeah.
but the one that was basically took the responsibility for everything.
And I hear that it's often the female in the family
Yeah.
who takes responsibility. And definitely I was trying to protect my little brother from all of it.
Mhm.
But yeah, I was the only one who could make myself available. And I'm an Enneagram too. I don't know if you're familiar with the
Yep.
Enneagram. Yes, it's the nurturer helper.
Yep.
And so of course I wanted to take care of my mom. Oh, that's not to say that I wasn't pretty resentful for
Yeah.
years. I have to be honest and say that initially I was really resentful about having to take care of the mother who had not really been able to take good care of me my whole lifetime. I knew she loved me. She was
Yeah.
warm and affectionate, one of the best human beings I've ever known. But because of her mental and physical situation, and what was happening to her brain, she just wasn't able to. And I carried some resentment about that for some years. So,
Yeah, that had to be a challenge because, we learn how to be a caregiver from watching those people around us. And if you did not have that, so you had to kind of figure it out as you were going, kind of testing the waters, I guess, to say, to see, okay, how is this? And unfortunately, I'm sure there is some resentment in there. So how did you work past that resentment?
oh, I think I just kept going, and
Mhm.
eventually the resentment subsided. And as I think back, the other primary support person that I did have was my stepmother. My parents got divorced when I was 3. My dad got remarried when I was 5, and so she had been in my life for a while, and she was a real source of guidance for me in a lot of things, and so I did also have her guidance and encouragement, which was very helpful. So, yeah, I think it took time, and it took really
Yeah.
both forgiving her
Yeah.
for, doing her very best job that she could as a mother, and, she just didn't have anything more to give, and forgiving myself. Forgiving myself for being
Yeah,
resentful and not being excited about taking care of her, at first. And then over the slow journey of losing her, she was in a nursing home for 20 years. And at the end of that, I had to make end of life
yeah.
decisions. And as she was progressing, I my heart couldn't help but soften, you
Yeah.
know, as I'm seeing that she's leaving and I'm seeing this terrible situation that she's in. She was, in a vegetative state for the last 11 years of her life. But she would cry when I would leave,
Yeah.
end my visits with her at the nursing home and leave. Even though she couldn't speak or interact or walk or do anything else. Um, and I felt deep compassion and sorrow for her and for me.
Thank you for sharing that. Part of that nurturing, taking care of other people is making sure that we take care of ourselves as well.
Mm,
So I love the fact that you said that you forgave yourself because that is not very easy. Sometimes we can forgive other people before we can forgive ourselves. And if we forgive or vice versa, it's one of those things that
mm,
you got to do both at the same time. And so, in the heat of the moment, it is hard. It's a challenge, especially as a young adult navigating that. So I commend you for actually making it through that and having that perspective, and then again being able to have that time to enjoy um, the joy of the time with your mother for what it was. However it was at
right.
the end there. It's unfortunate because I think we have about 25% of caregivers are caring for someone with dementia, and that number continues to rise. So again, what year was that she was diagnosed?
1987 is when she was diagnosed. It was probably 3 years earlier that she lost her job.
Yeah. So you think about from 1987 to where we are today, those numbers, I don't have them in front of me, but they're so much more prevalent now. I don't know what we knew about it in 1987, how much research was done at that point. I think the awareness is so much higher now than it
Mm.
was then. And again, so many people are dealing with it that didn't have to deal with it before.
It has become incredibly, incredibly common.
Yeah.
And I it seems like there is more awareness, helps us
Mhm.
see that some of the things that we used to just think were old age or senility are in fact dementia, and it seems like it's also becoming more prevalent.
Yeah. So how did that experience of caring for your mother kind of springboard you forward to kind of living, I guess, life more intentionally or kind of your direction in life?
Mm, yeah. I mean, I had an illustration in my face from an early age that we
Mhm.
may not get like 90 years to enjoy life.
Yeah.
And so I knew from a young age that I wanted to live well in the moments that I had. And when I was early in the years of taking care of my mom, I started at 22. I think her move into a nursing home was when I was 23. I had my first child at 25, second child at 27. I became a single mom at 27. And I mean, I knew, first of all, that my time with my children and all of my other loved ones was incredibly precious, and I wanted to make the most of it despite all the demands on my time between I was in law school, I was working, and I was taking care of my mom and my children. Um, but it's always given me a vision for making a difference with the days that I have. And that I think that it partly goes back to my mother, and the way that she lived life. And then it also traces back to my lawyer and the example that she set for me and the hand that she gave me to hold and the guidance when I so desperately needed it. And so that making a difference in the world and making this a better place for others, using the things that I've gone through has been uh, really my theme for many of my choices in life. It's why I decided to go to law school.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. We tend to forget the little things and we tend to get going. We're so busy that we forget that every day is precious and every moment. So you learned early. So how's that with your children? You had two children, you said. How old are they now?
They are 32 and 34, and they each have two children of their own. And so I now get to be Mimi to my
Yeah.
grandchildren. And it's the first time that I've been as available energetically as I am now. And, but both of my daughters have been through some really difficult things.
Isn't there?
My youngest daughter was the first one to have a baby, and her baby was born 3.5 months early.
Well,
And so her daughter, almost didn't live initially and then was dancing between life and death for a full 3 months. And so I got to be with her at the hospital every day. And it's interesting because I was the one with a lot of caregiving experience. She taught me so much. My daughter was also hospitalized. She had an infection that became septic. And I think it was the second day that I came into the hospital in the morning. Like, this was such a stunning lesson for me. I came in to bring her, her morning smoothie and breakfast. That's one thing that I can do when I'm caregiving for people is provide food. And
mhm.
and especially taking care of somebody who's taking care of their sick baby. And so I got to her hospital room, and on the door, there was a sign that she had handwritten and taped up on the door that said, "Fear and worry, stay outside this room." And I was like, oh, shoot. I guess I'm gonna have to stay outside of this room for a minute. Because I was full of fear and worry. And what an amazing lesson. And that takes me back to something that I know that you and I have talked about with the ring theory. And that beautiful system of identifying how to get the person at the center of the crisis the support that they need in a situation where everybody has some fear and anxiety going on.
I love that, Catherine. I mean, I love that having that sign up there because it really people don't understand how their emotion can come in and actually take somebody out of the space, the positive space they're in. And I think
Mhm.
that is just an amazing one to be in that situation to say, no, I'm not, we're not, it's not accepted here. And I think I shared with you about my wife when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She never accepted the cancer. It was not going to define who she was, and she was going to deal with it. It was all about her faith, and she was not going. It was all positivity. It was, I don't want to hear any of this negativity stuff. This is not going to happen here. So I think that's important to take ownership as someone who's going through it by taking ownership. But then also I love that brought awareness to you as you're going in and saying, no, I need to do that, not hide it, but to understand that there's something more important here for us to focus on. So I love that.
Right.
So the
Right.
ring theory, fill me in a little bit more
Yes.
about that.
Yeah. So there's a woman named Susan Silk who had a journey with cancer. And on this journey, she had friend after friend, family member after family member come into her hospital room and talk about how afraid they were, how sad they were, and vent all of their negative feelings about this cancer experience to the cancer patient, Susan. And she realized that was an energetic drain on her. And so she and her friend Barry Goldman created this system. They call it the ring theory to help people identify who should be doing what in relationship to supporting the crisis and dumping and complaining about the crisis. And so their approach is take a piece of paper, and this is so helpful for every single caregiver. Take a piece of
Mhm.
paper, and at the center of the paper, draw a circle. And inside of that circle, write the name of the person who's at the center of the crisis. So let's say that mom has dementia. Write mom's name in that center circle. And then draw another circle outside of that. And whoever is next closest to mom, if mom is married to dad or to somebody else, that name would probably go in that next circle. And then draw another circle. And if you're an adult child, you and maybe your siblings might be in that next circle. Or if you're really involved and your other siblings are not, maybe your name goes in that next circle and
Mhm.
other siblings go outside of that. And then come the other friends and family members and looky-loos who are certainly going to have an opinion about your caregiving and what you're doing right and what you're not doing right. Um, but then you take that graphic, and the philosophy is all of the care and support only go from outer circles towards the inner circles. So all of your energy, let's say that you're the primary child who's involved, your support only goes towards mom and dad. You do not spend any time supporting people who are farther out in that circle. So when my stepmother would call me and be upset that I wasn't giving her enough information about the baby, my grandchild in the hospital, and frustrated that she didn't know enough and all of that, I just ignored it. I
Yeah.
let that go straight over my head because my energy had to be directed towards my daughter so that she
Mhm.
could direct her energy towards her daughter. Then all of the dumping and complaining goes towards the outside. So mom in the center can dump and complain to everybody. Dad
Mhm.
can dump and complain to everybody except for mom.
Mhm.
You as the primary supportive child can dump to anybody other than mom and dad.
Yeah.
And that make that drawing, put it on your refrigerator. I've had so many law firm clients who have found this helpful. And sit down and have a discussion with your family about that theory so that everybody knows what their role is and how to support.
I love that, Catherine, because unfortunately it becomes a dumping ground in all directions and it's not healthy at all. So I love
Right.
this theory. When you explained it to me when we had that brief conversation, I'm like, I haven't heard of it before. And I love that because it does take that stress off of the person who really needs to heal. And that as you go down through the rings, each one of those people is going through something. So dad's going through something as he deals with mom, and because there is stress, but I love the fact that it's not going back to mom. I love the fact that it's going
Absolutely.
outward. And as long as the kids aren't bringing it back to dad, because unfortunately I see it, it's still, as you get farther and farther away, maybe they're not dumping on mom, but the kids and dad are going back and forth, dumping on each other. And that's
Uh-huh.
not helpful. And so, yeah, how do you, other
Yeah.
than I
And
guess the
everybody
constant
needs to
reminder,
dump.
y-
Yeah. Everybody needs to dump. Put it on your refrigerator and
yeah,
keep coming back to it and keep reminding your family about it.
yeah, I think that's important. So then, how do you? So here's a question I'm going to ask you: Is that in that situation you talked about your stepmom coming to you and you just kind of ignored it? Any advice for people on how to
Uh,
ignore it other than just to really switch that brain off? But how do you
right.
guard yourself in that?
So I would say that the short answer, if I needed to give my stepmother a short answer about why I'm ignoring it, why I need her not to be saying that to me, I would say and I may have said this at some point, I need to give all of my energy and support
Mhm.
to my daughter and
Yeah.
to my granddaughter. I don't have any extra energy to give any support to you, and I'm doing my best. I appreciate that you care, and I will give you the updates when I can. That's the short answer. And the longer answer is sitting down with her at some point when I have the space and the energy to do that and
Mhm.
saying, "Hey, here's a philosophy that has been really, really helpful for me in the past, for a lot of people in the past. Here's what I'm working from is this ring theory. And I wonder if you would be willing to support me in following this as well."
Yeah, and that it starts with honesty, is
Right.
admitting to that, and I think that's what people don't wanna do that. It's easier just to give a argument back, but I think being honest and saying, "Look, I have a lot going on." So I love the fact that when something happens, this is probably something that should be done from day one, saying, "Okay, this is how we're gonna work this. Moving
Yeah.
forward, these are our set of parameters, uh, and we all need to follow this." And I think that's one of the things that I start to work with family members and think about my own experiences with the caregiving is when you don't have any parameters and there's no rules and there's no one that's kind of, okay, this is how we want it to be. It's all over the place and it just becomes a free for all, and it doesn't work. It does not
Okay.
work. That's where all the stress is. And then you end up, there's a lot of resentment, so resentment just grows. And then also people just turn and say, okay, I'm going to turn away. And then they're not involved. They become
Right.
uninvolved caregivers. And we see that way too much. I've seen that in my 31 years of experience as a PT. I've seen that way too much, that people just, they can't talk to each other because they're not listening. They're just so busy saying their side. So I love this theory. I think that's definitely something that I'm gonna start recommending to people,
Uh-huh.
and we're still dealing with caregiving with my parents, and I think this is an important thing for all of us to be on that same page.
The other piece of that I think is vital to maintaining those supportive family relationships is checking your assumptions. Because
Mhm.
if I, in that situation, just assume that my stepmom wants to be a pain in the neck and doesn't get it and doesn't care, and, all of those places that our brains can go, then I'm going to respond to her one way. But if I just make the choice to assume that she
Mhm.
really loves me and she really wants to support and she simply doesn't know how to do that, or she's afraid, having her own experience, like that gives
Yeah,
me a whole lot more compassion, and I'm going
yeah.
to interact with her very differently. And I see that take families down when people's assumptions are that the others are coming from a negative place.
Yeah, I think assumptions and expectations have killed more relationships. People expect something in return as well. And so, yeah, it's really it goes back to honesty. It's having a conversation. And I think we need to remember that we can maybe not necessarily agree with everybody in around us in our family, but we need to listen and we need to come to some type of agreement of how we want to navigate the situation, because caregiving is only getting more complicated. The system is not going to save us. We can't just say, well, the paid caregiver is going to take care of it. No, we as a family need to come together and we need to listen to each other. And again, this ring theory really helps. It puts a plan in place, and then honesty. It comes back to having a conversation and admitting. We say use I statements. This is what I'm feeling, and then we can have a conversation and say, well, I'm sorry you felt that way. This is not my intent, and then you can work through kind of like a negotiation.
Absolutely. Yes. And with the apology, own whatever we did that wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
If it's genuine, say, "I'm sorry that I made you feel that way. I'm sorry that I said this. I'm sorry that I didn't respond." Even in the situation that I was in with my daughter and my granddaughter, if I say to my stepmom, you know, if I haven't responded to her text, let's say in 2 days, really sorry that I didn't respond for the last 2 days, even though I have a good reason why I didn't.
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
at least acknowledges her and acknowledges she cares. She wants to be involved. She wants to support. I didn't do anything wrong, but an apology can go a long way in owning what I did and its impact on her.
Yeah, that's so important because the first person to apologize, it usually can change that mind shift. You can shift it very quickly, just by, again, apologizing for your part of it. And the other person, for the majority of time, will then realize that, okay, yeah, maybe they had a part in some of this as well.
Right. Absolutely. Or at
And that's
least
where
they might start to open to that possibility.
so as far as when you were going through, I guess we can go whether it was earlier or now, how did you take care of yourself? Like, what things did you do
Uh,
to make sure that you cared for yourself emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, any of those things that I'll let you take it any way you want, but how do you
mhm.
care for yourself as a caregiver?
In the early days, I didn't.
Yeah.
I was just in survival modes, and I
Yeah.
don't recommend that to anybody. And my first principle for caregivers is put the oxygen mask on yourself. Everybody hears that. Everybody goes, Yeah, that sounds great, but I can't."
Sure.
Um, and you have to find some little ways. And I think for me, taking care of my two girls was actually nourishing for me. I mean, yes, it's also a lot of work, but were ways in which that was very nourishing and healing for me
Mhm.
to be in a position to take care of my children when my mother wasn't. And I found that to heal some of the old mother wounds that I had. And then, as I've gotten older, that was a 20-year journey after she first entered the nursing home. I started doing things mostly for me professionally that I really enjoyed doing and that really it helped me feel like I was making a difference in the world. And so that sense of purpose for me is very, very nourishing. And these days, in the caregiving that I have done in the last few years, it's been yoga.
Mhm.
Even once a week, yoga is a place. So my my now husband of 3 years, we've been together for almost 9, has incurable cancer. It started with a 19-centimeter tumor in 2019 that burst his intestine, and he almost died from that. And then reappeared as 12 tumors in his abdomen in 2021. And we went through chemotherapy with that for 6 months. He was completely debilitated and really grumpy. Um, and getting on the yoga mat through those seasons is the place where all of the feelings that I wasn't maybe comfortable feeling outside of that space would come out. I would cry on the yoga mat.
Mhm.
And you probably remember 2020, there was a little bit going on. We were
Yeah.
mostly at home. Even when I was doing yoga, virtually by Zoom, um, I would cry there. And I think for me, probably the biggest thing that I've learned in the last few years is to listen to what's happening inside of my body, and the pain and the brilliance inside of my body and nourish myself physically. For me, nature is a big deal. And
Mhm.
so, being in the mountains, going for hikes, being in the sunshine, simple things like that can really change my mood and my
Yeah.
mindset when I'm busy taking care of other people and sad and afraid about what's happening for the
Yeah.
people that I'm taking care of.
Yeah, we don't want to deny those feelings that you have. I think that's people want to suppress that because we're afraid of them ourselves. But I think owning them, but then also finding a healthy way to release them is so important because then you can fill yourself back up, which then provides you, you're in a much, like, again, the oxygen mask, you're in a much better position to assist your husband as he's going through his things. And then I'm guessing you use the you have the ring philosophy going on.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that was vital for me. And I think because we also work together, and I'm his boss. I'm the founder of my law firm. He works for me. That was a really important boundary for me to not be complaining
Yeah.
about, when he was working, if he wasn't if he was grumpy or if he wasn't very productive, like I was very, very clear on what my role was, thanks to the ring theory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's on. I'm glad to hear that. How's he doing?
He's doing really well. Yeah, it's quiet right now. It's, likely will pop back up, and there's no way to ever make
Mhm.
it fully go away. It's just a question of slowing down the growth.
Mhm.
So the tumors are quiet right now, and we're really enjoying life every moment, every day that we get. And that's back to that theme that we talked about earlier. I learned at a young age that we don't get forever with our ones. And I mean, this has been a really, really, strong reminder. And I just had my 60th birthday and I celebrated the heck out of it. My mother was in a nursing home before she was 60. And I spent, a week having a gathering with my girlfriends and a dinner with my husband and then going to Las Vegas, seeing shows and eating amazing food um, to celebrate the fact that I'm here at 60 and my mother
Mhm.
didn't ever get to do that.
Yeah. Well, happy belated birthday.
Oh,
I'm
thank you.
excited to hear that. So with your husband, how do you assist him, or what advice can you
Mm,
give to people like when he is struggling and he's probably has these emotions coming up because it's a scary thing. So how can you be there for him when you have some of this stuff as well? Like how do you do that?
yeah. I take care of myself. I put the oxygen mask, and I'm sure this is what you had to
Yeah.
do with your wife's cancer.
Yeah.
I've done somatic therapy. I have friends. I have resources for myself so that I don't I don't have to put any of my fears or sadness on him.
Yeah.
I have other places to put that, and I'm continually nourishing myself. And for me, that that reminder that we all know our trajectory. Life on Earth is temporary,
Mhm.
and for me, that's a really beautiful reminder. It's not a heavy one
Yeah.
because it helps inform the way that we live today.
Yeah.
And if I didn't remember that his life is temporary and my life is temporary, and I was just living as if I had forever, and then one day he was hit by a bus, that
Mhm.
I might have some substantial regrets. But when I'm living with that reminder, in my face, uh, I don't I don't tend to let the important things go unsaid or unexpressed or undone. Uh, I'm much better at making sure that when I lay my head on the pillow at night, I know that everything in how I would have wanted to show up today if it was my last day is
Mhm.
how I showed up, minus, the ups and downs of real life and human emotions and all of those things. But for the most part, uh, I lay my head down knowing that I've lived with intention today. And there's a fullness of human expression. And I think having,
Mhm.
the beautiful human emotions and the not so fun human emotions, that's part of the human experience. So I'm definitely having that.
And that's great. Beautifully said. I don't think I could say that any better. That was perfect. And yeah, it is living life. I think of Jim Valvano's speech at the ESPYS years ago, where he wants to live and laugh every day, cry every day. I'm not going to recite it off the top of my head, but it's every day. That's a full life. So it's a great
Amen.
reminder for all of us. And I know that, again, I hate the fact that it took all these experiences and getting to the point, whether it's cancer or any other diagnosis, your mom's Alzheimer's, for us to get to the point where we have to appreciate life. And I think we get so busy until my wife was diagnosed with cancer a year and a half. We just went around, you just go about your day and you
Right.
forget about the little things. And now it's amazing. I told her the other day, I just listening to her snore. Like I woke up and her nose was congested and she was snoring. And there was a day I probably would have nudged her and I just listened to her and it was comfort. And I said it provided comfort to me
Oh,
to listen to you. And so how we can turn those things that we normally maybe don't like or annoy us and turn them into something beautiful and something that's positive and such a blessing. It's just, yeah, value every moment.
what an amazing illustration. And I'm curious what it took for you to get to that place where you have that appreciation even of her snoring.
I think that the thing is, there's a Dr. Seuss quote, which I love. You never know the value of a moment until it becomes a memory. So that quote is something that's resonated with me
Mm.
years ago. I had a childhood friend pass away of breast cancer I think it was about 7 years ago, 8 years ago now. And had conversations with her as she was getting toward the end of her life. And it's just, that appreciation again, it's just, what are we missing in this? We get so focused on all the negative stuff and all the stuff that really means nothing that we forget about the beauty of life and the breath that we have. So yeah, for me, it was a lot of things. I mean, I've gone through past 3 years of transition and just appreciation as I became a caregiver and as I care for my parents and things they struggled. And then going through, I had a kind of like a spiritual awakening where I just realized that, okay, found my junk. I went into my closet, I cleaned out my junk that was
Wow.
interfering with my relationship and things that I thought were important that I just needed to empty out. Like I cleaned house. And in that I became so much closer and, again, my wife having cancer, that appreciation of just one more day, one more breath, whatever it is, we're going to enjoy it. And, really being at peace with that. I think that's the other thing is there's a calmness in the storm. You can get there, but it starts inside. It starts with your mind. It starts with your heart. And it starts with just what is your purpose? What is the importance of
Mhm.
today? And I think if we can get to that, all this other stuff will just fall away.
Absolutely. Yeah, what a beautiful journey you've been on. And as you talk about, starting with your mind and your heart and your body, the one thing that I have found to be most successful at taking me out of all the monkey mind, all the fears and worries and busyness and all of that is breathing. And
Yeah.
if there was one recommendation that I could make to people beyond using the ring theory, it would be breathe. Breathe slowly, breathe deeply, breathe in the sunshine, breathe in nature, breathe.
Yeah. By focusing back on the breath, it centers you and it takes us out of all of that nonsense. So yeah, I think that's so important. As far as any other advice that you have for caregivers?
The other advice that I would give is keep living
Mhm.
yourself. If you're taking care of a parent, your parent doesn't want you to help them live instead of you living. I
Mhm.
would never want that in a million years for my daughters. And so we can't necessarily keep them alive longer. We
Mhm.
can't necessarily give them better lives. The journey is what the journey is. And you living your life is still vitally important because there's no other time that you're going to be alive
Mhm.
as far as we know. We don't know how long you have to live, and there's no other time that you will have this season with yourself, with your spouse or partner, with your children, with your grandchildren. This time is fleeting,
Yeah.
and it's part of the human journey. It's not designed for us to walk away from our lives, but to add to our lives. And when we plan well, and maybe that's another thing I would add, make sure that you, ahead of your own um, care needs, have the right legal documents in place to make things as easy as possible for your loved ones, because you can either give people a mess that's going to require a lot of extra practical and legal work, or you can give them a pretty smooth plan for the days that they might have to take care of you.
Yeah, and thank you. That's a perfect segue to about the other thing that you're doing now, as far as put your speeches on and everything, as far
Mm.
as passing on not just our legal documents, that's primary, but tell us a little bit more about the other thing you're doing as well.
Yes. So, as you've heard, my mother was incapacitated at a young age. I did not get to know her story. She didn't pass on wisdom. She didn't get to tell me how much she loved me when I was in my teen years and 20s and beyond. Um, and I noticed something, over the last 30 years that I've been practicing law. I have now walked with hundreds of client families through those days and weeks and months after they lose their beloved loved one. And while estate planning is really important, it falls short with family after family after family, because what our families really want and need to thrive is not the money, it's not a legal plan, it's more of you. And so after watching that over and over again, I started doing research about the importance of family stories. And, Carl Jung had a lot to say about this and connecting to the generations. And, he says that doing things to actually connect to the generations that came before you and the generations that come after you is the single most important thing that you can do in a lifetime. And so I spent a couple of years researching and then creating tools to help people pass the financial capital, yes, and also the human capital, your wisdom, your life
Mm.
stories, and your love, so that your loved ones, your descendants, your children, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, your nieces and nephews, whoever is important to you, they have more of what will actually help carry them through the ups and downs of life. Because money is lovely. Sure, I would have loved to inherit millions of dollars from my mom, but that's not what I long for. What I
Yeah.
long for is more of her. And that's, even if your kids don't know it yet, when you're gone, that's what they will long for as well. I've created tools to help people discover and cultivate and then gift all of the wisdom, life stories, and love in a variety of formats, in writing, in books, in audio, in video, in art, so that you can live on for your loved ones.
I love that. I think, as I have a mother-in-law who's 90 years old, and she's of all the siblings and relatives, she's the last one living, and it's trying to get information. So I have my wife's cousin wanted to get some information on the family because it is lost. We don't know
Mhm.
who these people are. They may be names, but you don't really know much about them. Like, we can find things. So it's so valuable to be able to have that information, because you're right. Money's great, but it's the stories, it's the connection, it's the history. It
Yeah,
is what's so important for all of us. We want to know where
right.
we came from. Yeah, I know Adam Young's work, and it's fantastic. I'm part of a men's group, and what we did to connect, to understand each other better and to be able to love each other better, was we take time and everybody tells their story to the group, and I've now heard everybody's story, and it's just so valuable, the highs and lows of what people have gone through in their life, and then about their parents and just wherever they want to go. But
Yeah.
I think by us being open and listening to where we're vulnerable, where we're strong, I think it makes us more human and it allows us to connect on such a deeper level. So I love the work you're doing, again, getting people to look back and to understand where they came from and how we all interconnect together as a family.
Absolutely. And you think about it, we're in a relay race. And
Yeah.
each generation, if we pass the baton to the next generation, they don't have to start back at the starting line. We can pass them wisdom and we can leave them audios and videos that encourage them, that remind them how loved they are, and that deepen their sense of belonging in the world. Because we're all going to go through storms, whether
Yeah.
it's, a future caregiving event, if your spouse, God forbid, has dementia, or, whatever happens, that love and sense of belonging can really help carry us through all the dark moments that we face in life.
Yeah, I love that. So I know, have you rolled this out to the public yet? I know you're doing with your law practice right now.
I have just started to roll it out. And so if anybody wants more information, you can go to coloradoestateplan.com/TWC. It's True Wealth Community, because this is your true wealth, your financial capital
Yeah.
plus your human capital. So
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll link all that in the show notes. Any last advice
mm,
to children, caregivers, or really to
mm.
anybody?
For children specifically, I would say this is not the design for you to have to give up being cared for and care for a parent or grandparent. And so be gentle with yourself and find love and support from other adults who are in
Mhm.
your world. You may have to ask for it. You're worth asking. You're worth being supported. And for everybody in general, it is that same thing. Be gentle with yourself. This is a journey. It's part of all of us becoming more of who we were designed to be. And it stretches us and it hurts sometimes. And there can be incredible joys along the way. So be gentle.
I love it. Thank you, Catherine. I really appreciate you spending time with me today.
Thank you, Pete. It's delightful to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining me for this powerful conversation with Catherine Hammond. Her story is a reminder that caregiving is not just a role. It's a journey that shapes us, stretches us, and when we let it, transforms us. If today's episode resonated with you, please take a moment to subscribe to the Weathered Athlete podcast so you never miss future stories of strength, resilience, and purpose. And if you'd like to go a step further, I'd be honored if you'd consider becoming a patron of the show. Your support helps fund future episodes, improve production, and continue sharing conversations that matter. You can find the link to become a patron in the show notes or visit www.weatheredathlete.com. Together, we can build a community that supports those navigating life's toughest races and remind them that they're never running alone. Until next time, stay grounded, stay grateful, and keep showing up. God bless.